Hi, today on Winning Ways, we have Terence Lyons, the CEO of the Stakeholder company. Very interesting concept and in stakeholder management for companies. And I would like to talk to him and find out what exactly does it all mean for new businesses entering new markets. Hi, Terence. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be on.
Stakeholder company. I thought we were all stakeholders in a large ecosystem. So what does a stakeholder company really do?
We prefer to call it TSC. The stakeholder company is far too long, far too much a mouthful. So TSC will do fine. But basically, if you look at most problems that the world faces and most challenges that companies have, they're all stakeholder problems. They're all people-to-people challenges. How do you create the right conditions to identify the right group of people you need to meet, either to do more business or to protect against some regulatory risk? It's complex. And so we apply maths and science and data and advanced software analytics to something that's previously been done as an art or on Microsoft Excel or not done at all.
So, there are a host of companies which you've been, like you rightly mentioned, it was always considered an art. You have a little piece of information and then you go by your experience and gut feel to really, come out with an analysis of, how do you deal with these kind of stakeholders. So in your case, how do you really use data and science, or for that matter, data analytics, to really come out with that kind of advice for your clients?
Now that's a great question. That goes to the fundamental heart of what we do. The truth is often more apparent when you have a higher viewpoint. So just like looking at a complex environmental network or a cluster of nodes, you can get often a much better idea of the reality of the situation the higher you go. So rather than focusing on one particular individual, we look at the whole network and then we extrapolate how the network functions together. Who's shifting, who's adding impetus to a particular issue, how they're affecting it, what issues exist in the minds of what networks. And then at the end of that, hopefully we've identified the right key targets that a company needs to engage with or be conscious of to hopefully have a more successful stakeholder strategy.
So in terms of collecting data from markets as diverse as Myanmar to Saudi Arabia, how do you go about the process? Do you have people on the ground giving you those kind of inputs?
We avoid that. So we do not generally employ people on the ground. Why? Because we actually don't need to. There is far more information available today than we could even begin to imagine. And even for very primitive markets and primitive countries like, say, Papua New Guinea or others that we operate in, often there has been a digital leapfrog and you will be able to find so much more data than you ever expected there. So we look at thousands of different sources. We ingest those sources, we process them, we organize them, we store them, we make them searchable. And at the end of the day, we unleash what we believe is the ultimate pattern recognition software on the planet, and that's the human mind. So once we've curated and mined all of this data, a human analyst validates that it is the right data and it does make sense. And we find that combination of both machine plus mind delivers what has arguably not really been delivered yet in this data revolution, which is value out of the box. So rather than wait 6 months for a project to deliver, we can deliver the answers and the insights in very short order, sometimes in a matter of weeks, sometimes in a matter of months.
All this while, how has been, the insights that you have delivered to your clients? If you were to kind of look back and, what has been the success rate? Have you hit the bullseye most of the time?
Well, it depends on what the objective of the customers are, and they are many and varied. I would say that the ultimate question is, how many of our existing customers are old customers? How many of those were prepared to reinvest in a relationship with us because we delivered some value? So I would say our success rate has been very high. A very interesting recent example, last year, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was in some flux as the king was on his deathbed, and we were approached by a very large multinational corporation. He wanted to get a sense of how that power network would shape up post-king. Who would become the new king? And actually applying that mind plus machine value to that debate, we were able to process thousands of different points of data in less than 5 days with just 2 people, something that would have taken 5 months for 5 people in the past. And we're able to predict what was the likely outcome, and in that particular example, we had over an 85% success rate in predicting how people would shift across that network.
You were heading the worldwide marketing for Microsoft, and then you moved on to start your own company, the Stakeholder company. So, I mean, how has been the journey? I mean, being on your own, being a startup in that sense.
Well, I think the journey is going from 85,000 fellow colleagues to 30. So we're 30 today. Microsoft was a tremendous company. I was very privileged not just to have marketing, but a variety of roles there. Some special ops roles where we basically had to reinvent our way of thinking, our way of dealing with certain crises or issues around the globe. And that was an excellent training ground. It's definitely a good school for what we do today. And so the transition has been fairly smooth. So as the head of TSC, I have a lot more worries on my plate and a lot more concerns, which span anywhere from board meetings and dealing with venture capitalists, right down to did we order enough water for next week so that the staff won't go thirsty.
And if you look at innovation in your particular sphere, where do you think, I mean, if you were to kind of crystal ball gaze, where do you think that things could get better in the course of time?
Better in what sense?
In terms of how you could be delivering your services?
I mean, we're just getting started. Our product was designed to fulfill a particular need, a very critical need for many big companies, and we've been able to expand multinationally because of that. So we operate in 27 countries today from Singapore, but we also have satellite offices in other countries. And my core belief is that we are just a percentage of the way to the end. Imagine if I pulled out this iPhone in my pocket and I could scan around a crowded room and identify affinities or co-relationship opportunities. Ultimately, it's up to the human imagination, because that's what software is at the end. If we can imagine it, we can try and code it. So if we can imagine a class of problems, then we can code something against that and provide a solution to that problem.
So are you a venture-funded company?
We are a Singapore-based company. We were originally funded by the National Research Fund, so the Office of the Prime Minister. We also have 2 venture capitalists, Red Dot and Hero Capital, who've been great partners. They know this space quite well and a lot of experience for us.
So from a perspective of startups, what would you advise them in terms of when they are going about starting their own ideas? And today there's a whole buzz around people wanting to start out in different areas. So I mean, somebody who's been there, done that to some stage, I mean, what would you say? What are the things to look out for?
Well, my fundamental belief is that you should fail fast. And if you fail fast and you fail often enough, ultimately you'll be successful. So I think we all have ideas and we all create new ways of doing things. But turning that into a company is a very, very different thing. You have to be prepared for the good and the bad. You need very thick skin, and you've got to have a very high tolerance for risk. It's not for everyone. So I'm approached often to be a mentor to young people starting a company. I think that's the best thing they can do. And I think perhaps the best thing they can do is fail doing that, but fail really fast. And then they have the ultimate satisfaction of knowing they tried something, they learned from it, and then when they approach their next startup, they will do that more intelligently.
Thanks, Terence. Thank you for joining us.